Hey, it's Hannah from Lions and Rabbits here at the John Ball Zoo in the Penguin exhibit. Today we're going to be taking a class to learn about how to draw animals. This class is for all different levels, obviously, but today we're going to be working at a beginner's level, so I'm going to go through some of the materials that we use. You can use pencils, charcoal pencils, fine charcoal. You could use watercolors. It really is up to you what you want to use. Today, for our gesture drawings, I'll be using fine charcoal. Fine charcoal comes in soft, it comes in harder, it's very breakable, but it works pretty well, if you can see on this paper here. When we go back to our pencils, you'll see some of our pencils look a little bit sharper than others. What that means is that some of them are going to be harder, leaving a darker line, and others will be a little bit softer, which will leave more of a straight line. Think of what a graphing pencil would do. So as you see, this is a little bit different than this. When you're starting to draw, I recommend you start with an HB pencil because you can erase it pretty easily. This right here is a kneaded eraser. Looks kind of like putty, works kind of like putty. When you use it, you just pick color up, and then you knead it out. Pick color up again. We also have what most people would know as a pink pearl eraser, which is just a standard school eraser. These are great to use too. You can get into more crevices with it. The only thing is sometimes they tear paper a little bit more. So I like to use the kneaded eraser first and then follow up with this kind of eraser. A couple more things we have. We took 2 pieces of cardboard, bent them in half into an L, and made a little viewfinder. This will help you be able to see what you're doing, reference your photo, be able to see what image you want to capture. So when I'm making this, I'll be looking over at the penguins, trying to figure out what I want to put in my picture that will end up on my 8x10 board. A couple more things we have here are blending stumps. These blending stumps are used to smooth out. It usually works with more of a looser charcoal, but as you can see, you can bring shadows and shapes to life with blending stumps. A lot of people tend to overuse them, so I say wait until you start using them. Lastly, white charcoal pencils. This white pencil works great. Can't see it too well on white, but when you see it next to some other charcoal, you'll be able to really tell the difference. A big thing to keep in mind is that charcoal and graphite do not work well together. So if you're going to do your drawing in pencil and then move over to graphite, move over to charcoal, you're going to want to make sure that your graphite is almost erased off of your paper so that you're using it more for the line work instead. The last thing I forgot to bring, but which is really easy, is a sighting stick. The sighting stick is just a straight line. You want to have a straight edge so that you can be able to reference how you're doing your piece of artwork. So when I'm drawing something, I want to be able to make sure that my eye is the same length as it is this way, as it is this way, so that you can use a point of reference to be able to measure. On sighting sticks, a lot of times you can take your charcoal or pencil, whatever you're using, and mark the space like this so that you'll always have that reference. Technically, any kind of figure drawing class is really just working with the human structure or animal structure. So if you want to practice this class at home, you could practice with a toy figurine, you could practice with a human doll. It's really up to you how you want to figure this out. When you do a class like this though, the biggest thing to think about is the structure in which you're drawing. So what kind of body am I drawing? Is the head more of an head like a mammal, or does it have a vertebrae? All of those questions should be playing in your mind while you're drawing, but realistically, figure drawing is just figure drawing. today we're going to start with doing a gesture drawing. Gesture drawings, usually you can do them for warm up. People start sometimes with 10-minute gesture drawings, sometimes they go all the way up to 20 minutes, but sometimes they're as fast as 10 seconds. So this kind of drawing is what we do to just warm ourselves up and get the form of the creature that we're doing. I'm going to start with charcoal on my newsprint paper. This is cheaper paper. This is just for fun. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take a look at some of these swimming animals, which is going to be pretty hard for me to keep an animal still, right? So for the first drawing, what I'm going to do is spend 3 minutes just really trying to look at one of the penguins and decide how I want to draw it based on what swimming pattern all of the penguins are doing. The zoo actually has a website called the Zoo Insider that takes you on like kind of a journey of what this penguin is. So if you go and view one of those videos, you'll be able to pause and be able to see what the penguins look like and be able to give yourself a little bit more time than I have personally in here to be able to draw these animals. What we're going to do is we're going to start by taking the swimming animal and discovering what angle we want to draw it at. As you can see, most of the animals are swimming on their side, so that's what I'm going to be drawing. To start, a gesture drawing is quick. It's a warm-up sketch for you to do. These will determine what angle you want and how you want to draw your figure. Get a working surface that's good for you to draw on. If you don't have a table, grab a drawing board or make whatever surface you have available for you. I always do a quick few studies. For your first study, you might want to start longer, 3 minutes or more, but quicker up to 30 seconds by the time that you're done. Because we are going to draw a live animal, I think it's important to capture this animal with a photo if you're going to start a longer drawing. If you have the image at the right angle that you're drawing, you'll have a better attempt to have a more accurate figure. I also should mention this disclaimer. It's hard and inevitably it comes up to your imagination, so don't be tough on yourself. You'll get better with time. So to start, I'm going to do this 3-minute gesture drawing. I'll start my stopwatch for 3 minutes and I'll begin. Now they have to swim up. I should turn this way, actually. As you can see, I'm starting to look at the overall figure of the animal. This will give me an opportunity to really block in the shapes of the animal. I'm using quick wispy shapes to be able to describe what it looks like, but obviously this isn't to scale or to reference. This is just to get myself warmed up. One minute. I'm already at a minute and this is all I have. So maybe I should start to look at the color patterns. When I start to look at the color patterns, maybe I'm noticing different shapes, like maybe the tail isn't a straight line. Maybe there are more feathers on it than I thought before. And where are my feet? And what is the relation to the feet to the head? Maybe the head's more over here. As you can see, my bird is getting a little bit thicker and finding much more of its shape. Two minutes. 2 minutes? Mm-hmm. I'm a heavy hand, so drawing with a thicker charcoal isn't usually the best idea, but what you can do is really start to outline your lighter areas so so that when you go to pick up the color, you know this is supposed to be a stark white. Maybe I didn't get a good enough study of his face, so I want to start it over here. They all left me. In 3 minutes. That's what I got. So obviously, it's not going to look that much like a bird. If I was to do one for 1 minute or 30 seconds, let's do a 30-second one. If we were to do one for 30 seconds, this is quick. I'm going to have Tess count for me 30 down, and I'm going to try to draw one to accuracy.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
Those are two different ways I can do it. You can do a gesture drawing by taking and making almost what looks like a tornado, or you can look at the whole curvature of the animal and start to fill in the shape based on that. When you're making these gesture drawings, it's going to look weird because obviously this little arm has not been adjusted to size, but it's because it's kind of an optical illusion. When it's closer to you, it's going to appear smaller. So until I get all of my color blocked in, it shouldn't look like a bird. So now that we're back at lines and rabbits, I did myself a favor, took a picture of some birds and printed it off on my printer. As you can see, I printed it in black and white because then you'll be able to really see where the color differences are between the blackest blacks and the whitest whites right here. This will help me determine what I'm going to draw. I'll take my viewfinder, find the appropriate image that I'm looking to do. If you get really close, maybe you're only going to draw a wing and do a smaller study today, or the face. If you get a little bit further away, maybe you'll do the whole penguins. I have already cropped my image to be the image that I want to put on my board right here. To be able to visually carry this over, I should really notice what the background's looking like, where the feet of the penguin are, where the shadows are, and then where the horizon line is. As you can see right here, it looks like this is where the sun would set. Maybe right here, it depends on the time of year. Clouds up here, but you can see that these birds are really weighted down right in this area and right in their pelvis. What I'm going to do after this, I'm going to take my image and I'm going to look at it and start to gesture draw in where I think these birds should lie. As you can see, this should be a little bit over more, but maybe I just want to do a little bit of a different composition. Once again, this is your artwork. You can do it however you want. I'm going to put in the head. It's an average size of what I think that this bird's head would look like, but I'm also going to start thinking about how many heads does it take to make this full bird. So this is when if I was drawing in real life, I would take my sighting stick and I would extend it. My elbow would be straight and I'd be using one eye to kind of sight around and see what kind of shape the bird was in, but at the same time be able to determine with my pencil how big each part of the body would be based on using my sighting stick for scale. Because I'm doing this one on a piece of paper, this is about the head size that I'm looking at. My bird has 1, 2, 3, 4, almost 4.5 heads. So when I'm going to draw it, if this is the size of my head, I'm I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5 where his feet would lay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So when I'm drawing, sometimes people like to grid them out. Some people can draw without. It's just based on whatever you feel comfortable with. Now that I have this, I realize, oh, this head is really this head and neck. So maybe I need to change the shape of the head. And this is where I'm going to start my gesture drawing. I see his beak is over here somewhere. This line is a little bit sharper, so I'm going to take my pencil and draw down here. And then we see almost a straight line. This is where you can take your exciting stick in and say, maybe it's not straight. Maybe it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different angles that make this tiny little curve that almost seems like a straight line. So when I'm making it on my paper, using your stick to really get those angles in will help you in the long term make sure that your body is proportioned. Once again, seems like a straight line, but it's only straight this long, which is almost the size of a whole head. And then it's gonna curve back down, and I'm gonna draw that same curve right here. Once again, same curve, and back down to almost an angle. I'm gonna go back up to the head and say, that's not the shape of the beak, so maybe I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna start to fix that shape. I think it's really helpful when you take things and you make angles off of them. So if you know that the mouth is going to be straight, but that this beak is going to go up a little bit, how would you create that negative space around that shape? So really paying attention to that. When you're drawing, also know that your eyes should be on whatever you're drawing or whatever the physical object that you're drawing, much more than the object that you're drawing, because your brain is going to trick itself to think that certain things aren't the right size when maybe they are. This eyeball right here is going to be a great indicator on how everything should go. So when you're creating your piece, maybe you make a line through the eyeball, and once again you bring it back down so that you can use this as a reference line. The eyeball is directly across from the beak, so maybe it's down a little bit more. Maybe it's more like right here. But it doesn't matter because we're still in our beginning stages of drawing. Now, if I kept drawing right here, look how small my bird would be. But if I know that the shape of the head is as long as the neck right here, then I can catch myself. So maybe I now know that my neck is a little bit wider. And maybe this changes the entire overlay of my bird. Maybe his head's a little bit wider. Sharp angle here. You can start to see, this is where my bird has some feathers. Another sharp angle. And then we're starting to carry the wing down. Now I'm out of my lines, right? So maybe I do want to grid it off a little bit more. So I can make sure that I'm really thinking about how this wing interacts to make this bird look a little bit different. And I'm going to start to see that I might have to use my imagination to figure out what the rest of this shape looks like, because there's another bird's arm in the way. So I'm going to use this line right here and this line right here to determine how they would interact. But I'm also going to look at, what does this bird's arm look like? Is it pointed? Is it curved? looks pretty curved to me, so maybe this ends with a curve. I'm gonna find that little indentation that I have right here, and I'm gonna look at this negative space. See that triangle it makes? I want that same triangle right here. And maybe that's how I start to determine if that wing shape is correct. Now we'll go back down to the feet. In this image, you can't really tell what's happening because there's so many bright whites. So it's not the best image, but you can start to see that the foot really is under the belly. So how do we get this foot to be that shape under a belly? You're gonna have to use the power of shading in the complement of the shape to be able to determine that, because we all know that the foot of a penguin isn't this small. So we're gonna go in and we're gonna draw exactly how it looks and have the belief that we are gonna be able to make it look more realistic when it's all said and done. Drawing like this takes time. I don't expect anybody to have a drawing of a penguin done in one day, especially if it's a penguin that you're drawing from real life that's moving around. If you were to take a class like this in college, you'd probably be spending a couple weeks on an image like this. Those classes are around 3 hours at a time, and so these drawings really do take a lot of energy and time. As you can see now, I'm using my pencil to kind of block in some of the shapes. Maybe I start to realize that my wing is too high and it should have been at more of this angle, because I'm starting to do the line work that changes the color. And see how I'm drawing on a surface that's rounded? This round surface is the shape of his belly. So to be able to make sure that we maintain that, we need to make sure that every line that we're making follows suit with that shape. So we'll start to make our angles, but we're not gonna fill this shape in. We're just gonna block it out for when we wanna start putting our color in. Once again, just like college, there's many ways to teach this class, and there's many different styles in which people draw. So if you're learning in a different way and it's easier for you, do that way, because there's different ways to go about learning how to do this. So say I have my animal pretty figured out at this point. We've got some shadows and some highlights over here. I'm starting to see that his beak isn't that long and it's a little bit more round. The bottom is a little bit more shallow. But right here, I can't really tell the difference. You'll start to see these darker. This black is black right here, makes this gray a little bit more gray than it is black. So we're gonna come in here and we're gonna hit those dark gray spots. It's a trick for yourself is to squint your eyes a little bit and you'll start to be able to see the darkest of darks, those medium grays. Sometimes people will draw a little value scale on the side of their paper that goes from the darkest that they can make to the lightest that they can make. And maybe this is what your medium gray looks like. But this value scale can teach you what darkest color you'll get all the way to the lightest color. So this in between right here is going to be a lot of your darks for your penguin. But to make sure that we get those really deep shadows in the parts of the body that are underneath other parts, we need to make sure that we're thickening that line up and saving that darkest dark for that spot. Another thing that's really valuable to do is make sure that your whitest whites stay white. That's a huge problem in drawing all the time. So don't even come close to this until you're ready to go. I know I said it before that charcoal and pencil don't work well together. I'm going to use charcoal because it goes a little bit faster, but you can start to see if I have my charcoal here, what does pencil do? Doesn't really work, right? So maybe I will. Maybe I'll go with a 7B instead. Like I said, Think B for bold. Let me save this, so it's my darkest dark. As you can see, this part of the wing is almost black. So I'm gonna start to use this really dark pencil to make sure that we get that black color right here. I'm gonna fill it in. This might not be white, but it's definitely in this lighter gray area. So maybe it's just lightly filled in for now. I'm gonna take my blending stump and see how I can make this transition between this lighter gray into this dark, because as we can see, these are feathers and feathers are smooth. You can start to see, I'm gonna need something in between the two of them, and that's where you start to add your color in. Layering on layering on layering until you get the right colors. And if you think you might have put a little too much on, that's fine. Just grab your eraser and pick some up. But I tell you, this white is not this white. When you're finished, you want to make sure that this stays deep white and this stays in between these medium colors, because really this is supposed to be a reflection of black. I'm gonna keep working on this. You guys keep working on yours and we'll be back in a minute. Now that I have most of this blocked in, you can see I made a mess. Most of the time people will take something, make sure that they have a nice clean piece of paper so that they can cover up these mistakes. Sometimes you just don't. An eraser should be able to take them off. This is the time when I really start to care about the craftsmanship of my paper. So maybe I will start to put this out. As you can see in the base of my penguin right here, there's a lighter gray area from his stomach. And I'm using, at this point, a dark piece of charcoal that only comes one color. An easier way of doing this would be to be able to take something that can subtract and maybe add at the same time. And maybe you start to whisk your fingers up so that you can follow the curvature of the stomach like we talked about earlier. Maybe you need a little bit more dark. This form of charcoal drawing is called subtractive drawing. It's where you add and you subtract. Really enabling you to get that kind of color, but at the same time, to be able to add a softer texture to your drawing. This might be where I come in and say, all right, we really need to fill this darkest dark in, and maybe I need something other than this. Maybe now I need more of a charcoal pencil that has a straighter line where I can really go in and start to do some detail. This is where I go in and it's almost like coloring in the lines when you start to do the outside of the line after you finish the inside. We've blocked the color off. Now we need to see the form of what the color makes. Because whatever this form is what's going to lead you to the true roundness of this penguin's stomach. This is when we start to take out some of our extra line work that we drew that's been throwing us off for a while now. Maybe this is again where we start to fix up the little imperfections that might inevitably lead us to the true form that we were looking for. So we can keep going, but obviously this is a shorter class, so this is where I'm at about 40 minutes of doing this. If you wanted to, you could start to add in their background, like we talked about, his feet are weighted here. The most important thing to do after you finish your image is make sure that you weight that image on the ground, because this bird is not flying. It is on the ground. So are we going to use this darkest dark, or is this shadow more of a medium? Maybe we're taking a lighter color and filling that in. A really important thing to think about is line weight when you're drawing too, and that's going to be my last heat of advice. Make sure that anything that's in front of your image, so this body is in front of this arm. The way to determine that is through the weight of the line. That's a thin line right here. That's a thick line. If this thick line is in front of this arm, we're gonna know that this is the front of the penguin. See how that did that? It almost like tilted his hips to think, oh, this is the only white belly he has. But realistically, the only reason we need to show the thickness of this line is because we need the viewer to believe that this arm is behind it. So maybe it's thin here and it gets a little bit thicker in here. Goes back down to a thinner line. And that's how you determine it. Like I said, this class is easier when your animal's on paper, but you're not going to get the same experience out of it. So if you're out in the wild, take your drawing board, sit outside, do some quick gesture drawings, and then when you go home, get that piece of paper and draw it. It'll give you a much different perspective than you had in before. Thanks so much for taking this class. Let us know if you have any questions. Have a good one.